Okay, and then go ahead, Brett, take take it on, and he's going to be speaking first for about 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Linda, for inviting me, and really great to be here with you all. Super stoked to listen to what you guys are all up to, and it seems like really great stuff, and super impressed with what's going on in Orange County, and sort of you guys are really creating a movement here, and it's really quite impressive. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'll hop in to my presentation.
Yeah, can I just mention that I saw Brett speak at Sustain SoCal, and I was blown away by just the information and knowledge he had that was practical knowledge for cities. And so I asked him to speak today. So just wanted to mention that. He doesn't own a car either. So
I
that was really
appreciate that
impressive.
so much, Linda, and hopefully I can
Okay.
live up to that expectation. And I'm probably on the better end now of about probably 12 hours or so working. So hopefully I
Wow.
can keep my mind going here. And you all can see my screen now.
No.
Let's see here. Now you can.
No.
Let's see.
There we go.
There we go.
Great. Oh, and I'm actually, that's not the screen I want. So hold on one second here. I apologize. Oops. Hold on one second, folks. I apologize. Good. So now you can see my screen. So just a little background on myself. I'm an active transportation planner. I'm certainly car free. Miss Rose Kings was actually a professor of mine, as was Dean Abernathy, and I actually started my journey at Orange Coast College in the architecture program there. I got the bug, right? Just like probably all of you have the bug already. I was a young kid, and I totally got the bug and got rid of my vehicle that I had at the time, and was ready to really explore this concept. I was really into it and really into urbanism, and my career took me far. I ended up at UCLA and got a master's degree in urban and regional planning, and have been really blessed by this field, and really so excited, as I mentioned, to be back here in Orange County and see what you all are up to. Just some basic background on me. I am the active transportation coordinator for the city of Costa Mesa. That's not really what I'm going to be speaking to today. At Costa Mesa, we're doing a lot of great projects. We're really working on really making the city more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, and we definitely have a long way to go, but we're in a really good place. I previously was at LA Metro, and at LA Metro, I was a principal transportation planner there, and I managed the Open Streets Grant Program, which many of you may know as Ciclavia. So Ciclavia was one of my major projects that I had there, and it was really a blast to work on. And I also worked on the Metro Bike Share program there, and lots of other bicycle facility projects and programs. And before that, working at City of Pasadena's Department of Transportation, also at the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, which many know as MUNI, and then also at the City of Alameda. So today I'm hoping to share some of my experience with you. First thing I always like to talk about when I talk about transportation is, where we started here in Southern California. And many of you heard sort of a little bit of this a few weeks ago at the dual event that was put on. And, I want to re-speak to that is this was the largest rail system at the time in the world. It was over 1,000 miles, the Pacific Electric Railway. And as many old timers would call it, the red car. And it was overlapped with another system, which wasn't really talked to in that movie that we watched, but it was overlapped with what was called the yellow car system. And the yellow ar system was specific to Los Angeles, and it offered about another 500 miles. So
Brett,
between the two of them, it was 1,500 miles of railway. To give
Brett,
context to that. Oh, I'm sorry, Linda.
I just want to interrupt because I don't think, are you showing your slideshow? Because we're seeing a just like an email.
Oh, oops. Okay, so that's actually where I wanted you to be at, and so I'll start over here. Sorry, guys. Thank you so
That's
much
okay.
for stopping me there.
Thanks for the note in the
Yeah, for
whoever
sure.
said that.
Yeah. Good thing you stopped me because you guys would have literally been looking at an email for the next 20 minutes. So here's again the Pacific Electric Railway System. Can everyone see my screen now? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Good.
So again, this is where I like to usually start the conversation, and a lot of you heard about this last time, but again, this was the largest system at the time in the world. And it was overlapped, as I mentioned, with here in the core, it was overlapped with the yellow car, and I hope you guys can see my mouse as well, but it was overlapped with the yellow car here, and together they were about 1,500 miles of railway. The Pacific Electric being about 1,000 miles, and the yellow car being about 500 miles. And there was many other systems interspersed. So the red car came all the way here to Balboa, and people could take a train straight to downtown LA from Balboa. This was the Huntington line. Santa Ana also had lines all the way out here in the Inland Empire. Redlands, San Bernardino, etc. had lines. And even down Harbor Boulevard, which at the time was called Fairview Road, was the Fairview line, which was not a Pacific Electric line. It was a separate company, but there was trolley lines all over Southern California. And as was mentioned last, a few weeks ago, some of you were at that meeting with Strong Towns and with your group, and we kind of know the story of what happened there. One thing that we really didn't talk about there that some of you may know about is at the same time this was going on, which was about, give or take, about the late 1800s up until the mid 1950s. The last line was the Long Beach line, this line right here, if you can see my mouse, that was taken out. And they were slowly dismantled, as we know, and as everyone realizes now, would turn into buses. Well, at that same time was the California Cycleway project. And that was a very ambitious project to do something very similar to the Red Line and to build a series of dedicated, grade separated bicycle ways throughout California. And this was because bikes were booming. In Los Angeles in the late 1800s, bicycles were one of the primary modes of transportation. And this cycleway was going to be something really spectacular. And the only segment that was built was essentially from Los Angeles to Pasadena. And it didn't make it quite to downtown LA, but it made it to essentially Highland Park into downtown Pasadena. And that opened in 1900. It was around for a few years, but just like the Pacific Electric railroads, it lost favor to the automobile. And there's a lot of story behind that, right? There's a lot of politicization and there's a lot of finger pointing and stuff like this, but make no qualms about it. It was also society, right? It wasn't just GM. It wasn't just tire companies and Firestone. It was really society said, hey, here's this new technology. We want to hop on board. So the California Cycleway went the way of the Pacific Electric rail cars. And many of you that are from Southern California or grew up here, or maybe grew up in Los Angeles may recognize this is the Arroyo Seco, that runs. And here's the bikeway running, and this is what it looked like. And this is the Arroyo Seco Creek that runs off the Los Angeles River and runs up into Pasadena. So a lot of people say, well, what happened to this bikeway? It's a pretty spectacular piece of infrastructure that was built. And it was dismantled, similar to the red cars, and almost a ceremonial way was basically turned into firewood. And that alignment became, as many of you may know, the Arroyo Seco Parkway, which was California's first freeway, and in fact, the United States' first freeway. And look at it. It's a beautiful piece of infrastructure. You got beautiful bridges. It looks almost like a car commercial in this photo, right? It's like this beautiful, beautiful piece of infrastructure, open roads, open lanes. It was the fantasy of America, right? This idea of freedom, this idea that people, this Jeffersonian individualism of the United States, this idea of having freedom. I can go wherever I want. I have these open roads. And today, when you see car commercials, you see the same exact thing, right? You see these big open roads and these beautiful freeways. Well, lo and behold, this is a little 2-lane freeway. And sure enough, the Arroyo Seco Parkway, and a few years right after that, was traffic. And it became traffic pretty quick. And I have another photo in my slides, and I don't want to take it too far, but this is obviously outbound traffic going up into Pasadena at rush hour. You see the Pasadena sign here. And this is coming out of LA to basically where the Chavez Ravine area is now. And going into Los Angeles in the morning, there was traffic. And where did this come from, right? We say, well, where does traffic come from? This chart on the right, and it's an old chart, but it shows that population growth of Southern California, or not of Southern California, of California generally, most of that population growth occurring here in Southern California. About the time of our good old friend up here, the California Cycleway was essentially right in here, right around the late 1800s, 1900s. And this is the same time as the Pacific Electric Railroad, right into 1950. Well, by the time this came around, the Arroyo Seco Parkway, it was beautiful, brand new, opened freeway. First time people had ever heard of having a grade separated road, and people were zipping around. But again, that traffic happened fast because population was growing. And of course, what was the solution? You see here, it's 2 lanes. Well, here it's 3 lanes. And then lo and behold, you know what engineers like to do? We like to widen freeways, right? So here you go. A few years after this, they said, well, we'll fix that. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. We'll get rid of that traffic for you. And boom, 4 lanes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Same location. This is the same exact location coming out of downtown LA on the Arroyo Seco Parkway. And of course, we know the story from there. We've lived in traffic ever since. And this is the same location on the Arroyo Seco coming out of downtown in the modern day. And this is through downtown on the Arroyo Seco, which, as you guys know, is pretty much clogged with traffic 24 hours a day. So if the solution that the architects, the planners, the engineers, and the urban sort of designers of the world have come up with hasn't worked, why is that? Why has the freeways not worked? And this is early urbanism here. This is the early urbanist. This is in Rotterdam, University of Rotterdam, and this is around the 1970s. During the early origins of our modern large green movements. And these students wanted to do an experiment, and they wanted to show. And I imagine a lot of people may have seen this photo, and I hope they have. And for those that haven't, these students really wanted to show what 60 people in cars looks like. And on the left is 60 people out of their cars. This is how much space within the built environment that takes up. And then here's 60 people outside of a bus. And this is how much space that bus takes up in the urban environment. And then this is 60 people on their bikes. And this is how much bikes take up that space in the urban environment. So really at this point in the 1970s, people are starting to realize, hey, you know what? Cars take up a lot of space. Generally speaking, in my profession, we would look at a car as being something like an 18x7 envelope, and that includes mirrors and bumpers and things of that sort. So you're looking at an 18x7 envelope, and here you're looking at a 2x6 envelope, right? So it's a big difference. And of course, the engineers and the architects and the planners said, no, this is okay. We have a solution for this. Don't worry, we have a solution. Just like the solution here was, of course, to slowly widen this from 2 lanes to 3 lanes to 4 lanes to what you see today. They had a solution for this. And they said, no, don't worry. We're going to electrify cars. We're going to make cars autonomous. We're going to make cars shared. But the reality is that we're at today is that shared cars, Ubers and Lyfts, 60 people in shared cars still take up the same space. 60 people in these beautiful Teslas and electric cars zipping around still take up the same space. 60 people in autonomous cars still take up the same space. So we're at the conundrum then, and this is where my profession comes in. We're at the conundrum then that we have a finite, precious resource in our streets, right? And I mean, this is probably nowhere more pronounced in Orange County. I mean, Orange County has 3.2 million people in a very small area. And at this point, we really don't have space to widen our roadways anymore. We have streets like Brookhurst, there's no more right-of-way. Streets like Beach Boulevard, Harbor Boulevard, Magnolia, there's no more right-of-way. The other way, Catella, Lincoln, no more right-of-way. So we're in a space where we have a finite, precious resource. And this is where active transportation starts to take off. Because we start to say, okay, we could look at a road, a 4-lane roadway packed with cars, each of them, generally speaking, 1 person. And the numbers may vary by urban area. Sometimes it's 1.2, 1.3. But if you look around, generally speaking, a car is usually carrying one person, sometimes two, very rarely three. And then we can look at our urban environment and say, wait a minute, we can put buses in that space. We can still have some cars for those that really want them. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some that like them. We could have smaller buses, bigger buses, people rolling, people walking, and we increase the throughput of our space, right? Because this bus with 60 people on it, I can fit maybe 8 of them with free flow here, but I can only fit 60 people in cars. So really, not only are we loosening up the urban environment, that built environment, that built roadway, but we're also increasing the throughput on that built environment. So what is active transportation, right? Again, it started taking off probably sometime around when I was at Orange Coast College. And at that point, the word active transportation was really still not really in common parlance. If many of you may remember, at that point, we were using the word alternative transportation, and we were calling it alternative transportation. And there was a big push against that because it said, hey, wait a minute. If you say alternative transportation, then you are by nature assuming that the car is the dominant form of transportation, and then the alternative to that dominant form is walking, biking, rolling, doing something alternative. So I said, no, we're going to call it active transportation. And make no doubt about it, there was also and still is a push against the word active transportation, because when we talk about active transportation, we're assuming that cars somehow exist outside of any sort of normal mobility. The reality is you don't wake up in your bed, in your robe in a car. You don't have a big robe on your car. You're not chilling in your car in bed. You don't go down your stairs in your car and leave your driveway in your car and get to your office building in your car and then go up the elevator in your car and sit at your desk in your car. At some point, you are going to be walking, right? So at some point, we're all active. And, I've really been a big proponent of that. Of this idea of what is active transportation, because the reality is in my documents that I write, I usually say people walking, people driving cars, people riding bikes, people rolling, people in wheelchairs, because at the end of the day, these are all people, right, that are using mobility. Needless to say, the word active transportation has pretty much caught on at this point in its common parlance. However, just giving some history on it. Now, what's the importance of active transportation? Why is active transportation so special, right? Back to this idea of not only does it free up space on our streets, right? This finite, precious resource that we have only a limited amount of, right? I mean, that's not to say we can't keep building houses in Victorville and slowly connect Las Vegas to Los Angeles, but the story will always be the same. At some point, the resource will be finite, no matter what, just like any resource. Right? It is a finite resource. It is not a renewable resource. The road space is finite. But not only is the road space finite, but people actually don't need cars. That's what our data shows us. According to the National Household Travel Survey, about 28% of trips in the United States are 1 mile or less. And 1 mile or less is 1 mile is 20 minutes walking. That's at essentially 3 feet per second, which is what we time our crossings for at stoplights, etc. So about 28% of trips are within 1 mile, which is a 20-minute walk. Now, we also know that nearly 50% of our trips in the United States, according to the National Household Travel Survey, which is pretty much about as accurate as a data sample as you can get for something like this, are 3 miles or less. And a 3 miles is a very comfortable 20-minute bike ride. So that means that 50% of our trips in the United States are either walkable or bikeable. Yet our mode share in the United States for automobiles is probably on the range, or not probably, it is on the range of around 97, 96%. And that includes big cities like New York. On the average, right? New York City's mode share is much more like 70% non-auto. But needless to say, we know the data now that not only is the road space finite, not only are we wasting our finite road space, we're doing it without reason, because people don't need to get in the car to go get a gallon of milk that's literally a mile away. Problem is they don't have the infrastructure to get there. And I want to kind of show what these sheds, what we call in my profession, and many of you may know this word, we call this a walk shed or a bike shed. This is a walk shed and this is a bike shed. So in the city I work for, Costa Mesa, many of you may know just south of Fair Drive to the Triangle along Harbor Boulevard is a major retail and commercial district with a ton of retail and a ton of commercial. Pretty much anything that you could ever need is there. If you need your vacuum repaired, you can get your vacuum repaired. If you need to buy a new vacuum, you can buy a new vacuum. If you need a record player, you can get a record player. If you need your record player repaired, you can get a record player repaired. If you want any type of food you could ever imagine, any type of groceries, any type of household goods, essentially you would never need to leave that neighborhood. There's everything within there. And with a walk shed, a 1 mile buffer, which again is a 20-minute walk, this is how big of a space we're talking about. So everyone that lives in this space, all the way out to Monrovia Avenue here, or I think this Monrovia would be down here on 19th Street, all the way over here to Irvine Avenue, all the way up to Pine Creek, past Orange Coast College, is all within a 20-minute walk of this bundle of what we would call in urban planning or economics, a bundle of goods and services. This bundle of goods and services right here is within a 20-minute walk of all of these people, probably close to 60,000 people. Now, if we look at a bike shed, a 3 mile buffer zone, 20-minute bike ride, we're talking all the way out to the middle of Huntington Beach, all the way out to Newport Coast, all the way up to South Coast Plaza and the Irvine Business Center. All of that stuff is within a 20-minute walk of this. Now, the reality is this isn't the only one of these bundles of goods and services. We have another one on 19th Street. We have another one on 17th Street. We have another one further up on Harbor. We have another one at South Coast, and we have them everywhere. But we don't have the infrastructure to get those people walking and bicycling to that space safely and efficiently and comfortably. We don't have that 8 to 80, what we like to call 8 to 80 infrastructure. Because yeah, I'll do it. I don't own a car. I walk, bike, take transit everywhere I go because I've realized this and I'm comfortable with that. But I'm also, you know, a somewhat young and healthy person that's able to make those decisions. And I'm still risking my life as I do it. Now, with that being said, so that's kind of the spiel that I've been giving on active transportation for quite some time. Now, this is changing right now, and we know why, because we have e-bikes. E-bikes are changing that conversation. They're changing it immensely. So now we're in a space where, and I did not update this map, I apologize, but now we're in a space with an electric bicycle where that electric bicycle has, you know, within, if you're going 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, which is, I would hope that electric bikes are not going over that speed. Unfortunately, they are. But if you're within 20 miles, then I don't have to tell you how quick 20 minutes is. It's about, 7 miles shed now, right? So 7 miles from this bundle of goods and services is essentially downtown Santa Ana. So everyone from downtown Santa Ana can make it here on an electric bicycle in 20 minutes. Everyone from South Orange County could make it here on an electric bicycle in 7 minutes. Everyone from Seal Beach could make it here on an electric bicycle in not 7 minutes, but in 20 minutes. So again, we're changing the conversation. Our shed is changing, it's growing. And we're in this sort of, to tie it all back to the beginning of my conversation and talking about the Arroyo Seco Parkway taking over that California cycleway, and the automobile taking over the Pacific Electric Rail line. That was a huge paradigm shift in society, right? It was a societal shift. Society was shook to the core. And this is what happened. This is New York, not Los Angeles, but I showed you photos from Los Angeles. This is 1900 in New York. It is full of people on bicycles, people on horse and buggies. And this is what Fifth Avenue looked like at rush hour in 1900. Now you fast forward 13 years from there, which is a very short time. I was at Orange Coast College at that 13 years ago. This is now what rush hour looked like on Fifth Avenue in New York City. You shifted from this paradigm to this paradigm, a complete shift in the way the city was functioning. And people had to get on board. And a lot of people didn't. In the beginning, there was a lot of people and there was a lot of data back, even collected back then, that said, hey, you know what? That's not the future. You guys are crazy. We're not gonna get a car. You think we're gonna get in a car? No, dude, we're doing horse and buggy still. We got our staple out front in our house. You know, we have our hay, we're doing all this, and that's where they stayed at. But the reality was is that the city had to be rebuilt. And that's what engineers and urban planners had to do. They rebuilt the city. And that's why you ended up with stuff like in the beginning of my talk, that's why you ended up with stuff like this, the California Cycleway along the Arroyo Seco turning into the Arroyo Seco Parkway, because society shifted from horse and buggy and bicycle to automobile. But it got us sick and ended up here. And now we're in a modern space where we are shifting again from our modern horse and buggy, which is cars, back to bicycles and active transportation, because we simply do not have the roadway space anymore to handle the amount of people that we have trying to move about the city. So again, we are in the modern proliferation of bicycles. And Russell Toller, our wonderful gentleman from CMABS, may recognize his neighborhood here next to Kaiser Elementary. You know, this is on a bike to school day, but make no qualms about it. You go over there any morning and you're going to see kids on bicycles everywhere. And in fact, you go on that street any time of day and you're going to see kids on bicycles. Go over a few blocks to Triangle Square, it still looks like this, right? So we're in a very similar situation where we have to shift again from this horse and buggy style infrastructure to auto infrastructure, but instead it's the opposite. We have to switch back because literally that's where we're at, and the technology is there. The e-bike is there, right? Now, what does that look like, right? You know, this is Triangle Square, again, Costa Mesa, on a standard Friday night. This is what it looks like. This is how people are accessing the space on this street. They're accessing that space on this street, right? And, you know, this is what our society is starting to look like. So some of the things we need to consider, and again, this is me speaking as a transportation planner, not as someone from Costa Mesa. This is every city, all right? We need separation of modes. Straight up. The bikes need to be separated from cars. A simple paint line is not going to do the trick. Bikes need to be separated from cars. And quite frankly, bikes need to be separated from pedestrians. Pedestrians and bikes no longer mix. You can't mix a 20-mile-an-hour bicycle with a 3-mile-an-hour human being on walking. It just does not work. A person riding a bicycle at 20 miles an hour and a person walking at 3 miles an hour is no longer a feasible mix. And to be quite frank, someone riding a bicycle at, you know, generally speaking, sometimes the FHWA tries to use 13 miles an hour. That's not realistic for someone on a bicycle. Most people riding bicycles are about 5 to 8 miles an hour. You can't mix someone riding a bicycle at 5 to 8 miles an hour with someone riding a bicycle at 20 miles an hour. That's not an acceptable mix of modes. Just like back here, we couldn't mix automobiles with horses and buggies. They're different modes. It doesn't work that way. Right? You had to separate the modes. And that's why here you see the modes separated. You see the people in different spaces. So really we need to separate those modes. Second, and this is one I harp on constantly, we need secure bicycle parking. Right? You know, and this is of paramount importance. We need to put places where people can park these vehicles, because this right here is a perfect example of how that doesn't work. This is a big, huge 4-story parking structure, and people are trying to get there by bike and they have nowhere to put those bicycles. And then lastly, we are shifting modes as a society. We're seeing it happen, and we really need to take that safety training into consideration, because these are different vehicles now. You know, the electric bicycle is a completely different mode and vehicle. Now with that was my presentation. I will go ahead and stop sharing and hand it back over to you, Linda. And thank you very much for listening to me, everyone.
Okay, Brett, I thank you so much. Wasn't that fantastic? I see yeah, everybody waving. And we do, and I really appreciate that some of you are putting comments in the chat. Our plan is to have Arliss speak, and Arliss, I am going to right now make you a co-host so that you can share your slides. But if that doesn't work, I did get your slides, and I can share them if that doesn't work out. But we're going to have Councilmember Arliss Reynolds. I'm excited to see her because she's been such an inspiration for me getting back on my bike. And that is just so important. And then we're going to have Yusuf Kadechi speak from Irvine. And then with whatever time we have, we're going to have questions and answers. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat too. And some people can answer questions in the chat, but we'll also have some time at the end for a few questions. So with that, I will ask Arliss Reynolds, Councilmember Reynolds, if she would like to share her screen.
Hey, Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm feel for about 30 seconds like that old lady who can't figure out technology. Let me figure out how to share my screen here. I was able to tune in for Brett Atencio's presentation, and so I do want to share that I started maybe 2 hours ago in Pasadena actually, and came home on public transportation. So I'm now at a coffee shop not too far from the Santa Ana train station. So doing my best to walk the talk.
Yes, and thank you.
You're seeing a yeah. So please let me know if this sounds not great. I just got this set up about 5 minutes ago. So unless I hear complaining, I'll continue. So I wanted to actually talk a little bit about sort of the movement in Costa Mesa. Brett Atencio gave a really good sort of history of how we got to where we are in California and some of the things that we're working on and need to work on to improve active transportation and really address climate goals. So I wanted to step back a bit as I thought about talking to this audience, and I remembered that most folks who know me since I joined the city council know me as an active transportation person, but I'm actually originally what we lovingly call an enviro. That's my background. That's how Linda and I met once upon a time. I just also put the slide together on that train ride, so each slide might surprise me as I come through. Yeah. So I mentioned my really heart is in the environmental sustainability space. My professional work since graduating college has been in the clean energy industry and specifically energy efficiency. So the enviros on this call may recognize this chart. It's a well-known chart for folks who work in energy in California. It's the source of our state's carbon emissions. So when the state's looking at greenhouse gas reduction goals and clean energy goals, we're looking at all of the sources of those goals. And my work is in energy efficiency in what we call the built environment, so in buildings. I work on energy efficiency opportunities in the industrial sector up here, commercial buildings, residential buildings. We work with agricultural industry as well to figure out how to reduce emissions in those spaces. So for 15 years now, oh gosh, maybe more, the years continue, I spend my life in energy efficiency. One of my pet peeves, and I'm going to share this slide, I don't know if folks have seen it before, is when I tell people I work in clean energy, they always assume, oh, solar. Oh, you must do solar projects. And I always have to have this conversation about why energy efficiency should always come ahead of solar. Solar, as you all know, is additional generation. Of course, it's clean energy generation, but it's the idea of building new infrastructure to serve a demand for energy. The idea of energy efficiency is saying, hey, like, can we provide services, provide heating, provide cooling more efficiently, so the call for energy on our electric system is actually lower. It's a cleaner form of energy because you're not building infrastructure. It's a cheaper form of an energy resource because you're not building infrastructure. Much better for the taxpayer. And California recognizes energy efficiency as what we call first in the loading order. So when we're looking at a need for additional energy supply in California, the law is to always look for energy efficiency first. So for about that's caught on. So I would say for at least the first 5 to 10 years of my career, I was having this conversation all the time. Energy efficiency is considered the first fuel and the cleanest fuel that we should be pursuing. So that's my professional work. Also, my advocacy work has always been in the environmental space, and one of the biggest efforts I worked on was the Banning Ranch project, a lot of statewide coastal advocacy. So you can see me over here on the left, long before I ever considered running for council, working with some other young folks in the area. He actually works at the Coastal Commission now, but petitioning in front of coastal commissioners about projects and impacts on our coastline, and of course the rising oceans. Those are huge issues that we need our commissioners to be thinking about. I wanted to share some of these photos just to show how how grassroots we were, really fighting. I think many of you probably have similar experiences, conversation by conversation by conversation, talking about these issues. And most of you may know how this ended up. We ended up winning the fight to save Banning Ranch after a lot of advocacy. A friend of mine took this photo during the final Coastal Commission hearing where we were talking about this Banning Ranch project. And I love this photo for a number of reasons. One, so here I am again, before I considered running for office. We have the t-shirts that my friend designed that we're wearing. I'm standing next to a young Latina and my mother. Many people in the space commented, I don't have the data to prove it, but have shared that they think my mother is the first person who has ever spoken in Spanish in front of the Coastal Commission. You can see my glare. This is the image of me here, and I'm pretty sure what's happening at this moment is as I was speaking, the coastal commissioners, a few of them were not paying attention, so I paused to ask them to pay attention. And I think this might have been the moment that I decided to run for council, because my speech was about, I was very, very frustrated how some other folks speaking at this hearing were speaking for residents of Westside Costa Mesa, when I know for a fact they were not speaking to us because I had snuck into a few of their meetings. Those were the fun days when no one recognized who I was. Joining City Council, of course, had a lot of priorities on sustainability. I'm not going to go through these here, other than to mention what I think are some of our most important, which is hiring people on staff who are going to be working on sustainability actions, from our sustainability manager. You heard for Atencio, our active transportation coordinator, and we're hiring now for a planner who's focused on sustainable city planning. So I came in, I hope I've gotten my enviro creds in place now, came into City Council, and of course I had to pay attention to much more than just the sustainability work that I had joined to focus on. And a few things happened in those first few months. I was invited on walks, and I was invited on bike rides from people who either were already advocates or who really wanted someone to understand what it was like to walk and bike in Costa Mesa. So I spent about a year walking and biking with people, and it was transformational in my own understanding of what the experience was. I had really only, I biked around as a kid all the time, but that was in the neighborhood, to parks, to the local school, not really across the city. So this is really how I got started in the active transportation movement. And then I wanted to learn more about it. So I found an organization called America Walks. Russell, if you're sharing links, can you share a link to America Walks? I want to encourage everyone to follow America Walks. It's a national advocacy organization for walkable cities, and they focus on local capacity building. I participated in a program called the Walking College, which was my college, if you will, 6 months of education about the importance of walkable cities. I actually now serve on the board of America Walks, and we are doing really, really important things nationwide to support walkability. I also wanted to study what makes healthy cities, and my celebration for winning my first campaign was to go to Greece. I picked a small island in Greece that's recognized as one of the blue zones. And if you're not familiar, the blue zones are areas of the world where people regularly live longer and are much, much healthier than other people, even in nearby communities. And there's been a lot of scientific research about what makes people in these areas so healthy. And this is a summary of that, but I want you to just notice on top. the most important thing is in all of these places where healthy people live, they're able to move naturally. So that's just one of many pieces of many studies or pieces of data or webinars that I listen to that really transformed my thinking and understanding of what we should be doing as a city. And I've become so convinced that walkability is one of the most important solutions we should pursue. It's a solution that addresses safety, of course, but also sustainability, because the way we're moving around is cleaner. There's economic improvements, there's health improvements. There's also community health and resilience. I wasn't able to find the chart, but another really compelling study I had read was one that showed a correlation between the speed on neighborhood streets and the number of people who knew their neighbors' names. So when cars drive slower through a neighborhood, people are more likely to be out in the street and interact with each other. And then of course, the opposite of that, when cars are speeding through streets, people are uncomfortable being in their neighborhood streets and they're less likely to know their neighbor. That's really important because neighbors knowing each other is a fundamental sort of background for resilient neighborhoods. So when we're talking about, you know, we need to move away from gas cars for the sustainability mitigation, but we need to really support resilient communities for the adaptation pieces of the work that we have to do on the sustainability front. So I became obsessed with walkability and bikeability. And it wasn't something that was embraced by a lot of people right away. So I'm going to just share some articles that I clipped from sort of our early days. One of the things that I started to do was with folks who were reaching out, just host community bike rides, right? Try to find the community of advocates who are supporting this work as well. And with the help of a number of people, and I will say, Brett Atencio was not on our staff. I did not get help from city staff at this time, which I'll come back to. We just did it. And that was how I think one of the ways that we really started to create an active community in Costa Mesa, who turned into our very strong advocacy base that then demanded people like Brett Atencio join our staff and have now supported a large number of infrastructure projects that have already been installed and many still in the pipeline. We've hosted on the right here was a pop-up demonstration, 2 roundabouts in the city that created got a lot of attention, good and bad. Some of our best advocates found the existing advocates because of this demonstration. We've hosted rodeos here on the left. And then I want to share this picture on the right is one of my favorite photos from an event that the Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets hosted, handing out bike lights. This was a father at Victoria Elementary who weekly rides with his sons around the city. These are the folks that we're working on when we talk about wanting to keep people safe in the city. So going back to this slide, what many of you probably noticed when I showed this the first time is the biggest slice of the pie is transportation. The 38% of greenhouse gas emissions in California come from our transportation sector. If we're going to address the climate crisis, we have to change the way we move around. And before you guys say the solution is EVs, I want to come back to this photo. My new pet peeve is that EVs are the solution to transportation, to clean transportation. And Brett Atencio did a great job talking about some of the reasons for this. And I just want to add to that, EVs certainly get gas cars off the road, but they leave so many other benefits off the table. The benefits that I mentioned around individual health, community health and resilience, economic prosperity, how we use land in the city. I can't emphasize enough how important supporting walkability, bikeability, transit, and other issues around active transportation is important to the climate movement. And I'm so excited for our climate folks and our active transportation folks to be working together more on these important issues. I think that's it. Linda, I hope it didn't take too much time. I'll be on for questions after Yusuf, and I'm excited to hear from Yusuf as well. Thanks, everyone.
No, that was perfect. And thank you so much good stuff. And those bike rides, got, like I said, it inspired me to get back on my bike. And it's just, it also told me how important just neighborhoods are, just getting to know my city by bike and where the safe routes are. So now I can go to the OC Fair on safe routes because I went on one of the bike routes where we took the safe, routes. And so it's
I love to hear it.
it's really critical. Yeah. So, and Russell, thanks so much for sharing you're just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to introduce Yusuf. Yusuf, let me make sure I've made you a co-host. Do you want to share your own slides or would you like me to share them?
I think I'll share from my computer if that's all right.
Yeah, that's preferred. So I just want to make sure, where are you? Let's see if sorry about this, that I have, okay, there you are. Okay, now you're a co-host and you can go ahead and share, and if all of you can stick around, and if you want to put questions in the chat, please be willing. But Irvine is another city that is doing so much on climate action, and Yusuf again has been an inspiration on Twitter for me, but also I met him at the Sustain SoCal event, and just really a great voice in this space, and wanted him to be here and to tell anyone also in Irvine how to get involved. So take it away, Yusuf.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Yusuf. A few things about me. I'm one of the main organizers for a small group called RISE, Remake Irvine Streets for Everyone. I'm also one of the main organizers for Strong Towns OC, which CMAPS and RISE and a bunch of other people from OC are part of. It's a countywide coalition for mobility advocacy and how can we help people connect with each other in different cities, but also on a regional level, how can we start to lobby, like try to get the ball going in terms of lobbying regional bodies such as Orange County Transportation Authority, maybe Metrolink, things like that. So that's kind of Strong Towns OC. I'm also on the Transportation Commission in the city of Irvine. Our commission has 3 out of 5 e-bikers now, so it's pretty great in terms of like how things are changing in Irvine. So I always like to show this chart anytime I talk about transportation. Arliss showed her chart. It was 38%. I'm gonna beat you, Arliss. It's 51% in Irvine. It's literally more than every other category combined, transportation. It's a gigantic piece of the pie. And this is obviously in part due to car dependency. So the conversation, like, Russell and Arliss alluded to, EVs are not the only solution. There's lots of reports that show that EVs will not take us to where we need to be in terms of carbon neutrality. The city of Irvine has made a goal to become carbon neutral by 2030. Don't think we'll make it by 2030, but we are still committed to carbon neutrality. So the council says. And also, I just wanted to show this. I added this like very last second. This is something called level of traffic stress. It's a measure of how stressful it is for someone on a bike or on foot to be in an urban environment. So LTS1 is the most comfortable. Usually you find that to be trails and protected bike lanes. LTS2 and LTS3 are, bike lanes where you start to lose some people. And LTS4 is, the strong and the fearless. You think of like the Lycra wearing cyclists who bike 30 miles on PCH on Saturday morning. So like those types of, really enthused cyclists, whereas as opposed to, the mom and the child and, just the regular human being. And with that in mind, I want to show you this chart. This is from the city of Irvine's active transportation plan, measuring level of traffic stress throughout the city. As you can see, like the vast majority of our roads are at level of traffic stress 4, meaning it accommodates only to the comfort level of 1 to 3%. Depending on who you ask what LTS4 means, but usually it's like 1 to 3% of the population. That means 97 to 99% of the population do not feel comfortable biking on Irvine's roads. And so this is a really huge barrier for us to overcome. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of persistence on the council to make our roads more accessible to people of all ages and abilities, not just the confident and enthused few cyclists. So I'll try to be brief because we're a little low on time. But the conversation in Irvine around transportation policy has improved to a certain extent, mainly thanks to climate advocacy. There is a slow but starting to be meaningful awareness among our policymakers, the need to shift away from car dependency. When you look at that chart, it's pretty enormous. However, it's not quite where it needs to be. There's still a lot of work to do and a lot of pressure that needs to be put on our policymakers for sure. So kind of want to just highlight some of the things that are happening right now in Irvine. The most exciting thing for me is our Open Streets event. This is something my council member who appointed me, Councilmember Traceder and Councilmember Agron, we did a lot of work to get this off the ground. We're looking at May 4th, tentatively, may change. I hope to see you there. It's 1.7 miles, a little slow, a little short, but it's still significant. It's the third ever in Orange County. Garden Grove and Santa Ana have done it. Costa Mesa, I hope you're jealous. Another thing that's going on is the South Yale project. This is the flagship cycle track. Cycle track is another term for protected bike lane. So this is the flagship protected bike lane project in the city. It's a 1/2 mile corridor. This right of way was originally meant to have 4 lanes of motor traffic, but for various reasons, because there was supposed to be a bridge over the 405 that got canceled because the residents didn't want to live next to it. So that ended up being only a bike and ped bridge over the 405. That's on Yale, if you're familiar. So this is an excessive right of way. This is where they're going to be experimenting with cycle track because it's the least offensive to drivers. So so that's what this is, like the flagship project. It's 6 years in the making, very old. It has, but in recent months, because of some of the advocacy going on and some of the public comments we've been trying to make, I think it's become a high-profile project. So also wanted to share that there was also a South Yale demonstration project. Some of the CMAPS people actually came to that. It was kind of, the point of it was with temporary barriers to show the public what it would look like with a cycle track in that, kind of just to build public support and kind of educate it what it looks like, what the interaction between cars and bikes might look like. So that's what that purpose was. It was overwhelmingly positive reception, even made some of the local news, which was exciting. Go to the next one. And this is probably the most ambitious thing the city is doing so far right now in terms of active transportation. Mayor Khan initiated this, the sustainable mobility plan. It's basically come back in January 24 with, I don't want to call it a master plan, but like an overarching plan of the next phase of protected bike lanes in the city. And it has that language, class 4 approach on arterials. So that's very significant. Whereas, for a long time, the city was very conservative about it. They were afraid of upsetting residents in terms of like trying something novel, but with persistent public, I think like us and the other environmental advocates, we like come to like 6 times at a council meeting at the same thing, just repeating it. So I think they finally got the message and realized how slow they were being. So it has an emphasis on safe routes to school. And one thing we're hoping to see is this is going to be an integral part of the climate action adaptation plan, this mobility plan. And we're hoping to see modal share targets. Modal share, if you're not familiar with the term, it's what percentage of what percentage of trips are taken by what mode of transportation. So we don't even track that in the city right now. We're going to have to track that. So it should be interesting. So that's going to come in January, and that's a great opportunity to give public comment there as well. Things to consider moving forward. The city of this picture is pretty incredible to me. I highlighted all the parking space in and around Irvine train station, and in a lot of this area, it's going to see new housing because the city of Irvine has so there's something called RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Allocation. Every city in the state is mandated to build a certain amount of housing. Irvine got hit with 30,000. We're in a housing crisis. It's great. It's something we need to be doing. Now the question is, how will that housing be built? Will it be built? I know this is mainly active transportation. It delves into transit a little bit too, but So how will these neighborhoods be built? Will it be centered around walking, cycling, and transit, or will we see more car dependent density, lack of human scale mixed use urban environments that we see in the Irvine business complex? And in order to kind of see real transit oriented development, we're going to have to take a look at parking minimum regulations, level of service methodology. Parking minimums require every development to have a certain amount of parking. This keeps us trapped in a cycle of car dependency. Level of service is also a flawed methodology that, it prioritizes traffic flow over everything else. So it very brief because we don't have a lot of time, sorry. But okay, how can you help Irvine move away from car dependency? Public comments. Public comments. Like, that is so critical. Our policymakers really need to be hearing this conversation. They don't hear it enough. I try to do it. I think they're starting to think like I'm a lone wolf. Like, we need to get more people involved. Come to council meetings, especially when transportation related items are coming. Come to commission meetings, planning commission meetings, transportation commission meetings. Transportation commission is getting more and more progressive. You will be extremely helpful if you come comment. And most of all, engage with your electeds, email your council and staff with your experiences walking and cycling. Express your concern of a lack of safety, because they really do need to hear these kinds of conversations. Unfortunately, they still are stuck in a certain mindset, and that's the best thing you can do to get things moving forward. And yeah, we have, if you're in Irvine, please join Rise. The Discord link is on the right, but if you are in Orange County, please feel free to join Strong Towns Orange County. We are a really critical, we are at a critical juncture in terms of, soul searching and stuff. I mean, we have a sense, but we're trying to grow membership, and, it'll be really critical if you join the movement. So that's all I have for you today. How can I stop sharing? Okay, it's 8:01. That's good. Okay.
Wow, that was amazing. You were right on time and you said so many great things. Thank you so much. I will be, sharing the links in the chat. We'll be sending out an email to our members, and we are recording this, and we'll send out a link to the recording, and then you can share it with your friends. It is really important, especially in the climate world, that we talk about this portion of it. We could go on and on too about how important putting housing near transit areas is, and we just barely touched on that. But that too is critical for what we're doing. But if we have a little bit of time for questions, and we have our members here, would anybody, does anybody have any questions? If you raise your hand that we want to ask. Do I see any hands raised?
Linda, this is Arliss. I just want to chime in and emphasize what you have said about the importance of public comments. I don't know, I think Irvine's something like 3 times the size of Costa Mesa, out of that's what, 300,000 people or so. There's probably a tiny, tiny handful of people who show up and speak to the city council. So your voice counts for a huge amount of weight beyond maybe your voter status, for example. So it makes a huge impact. Half an hour of your time to get there so you can speak and leave. It really, really matters.
And we will, in whatever city you're in, if it is really helpful, you guys, I can't tell you how helpful it is for me to receive an email that says, hey, Garden Grove is voting tonight on this, or in a few days, please, a few days. So I have time to get an email out, because our members are listed by city, most of them. And so I can look and say, oh, there's 12 members in Garden Grove. And that's exactly what I did. I sent out a message to my 12 members in Garden Grove and said, this is happening. It would be so helpful if you guys showed up or sent an email. I know I did it for Tustin, like 3 of our members showed up to the meeting. And so if you're watching in your city, it is so helpful to just send us information and let us know, so that we can tell our members. And I'm trying to do more of that in Costa Mesa as I'm you know, trying to get more involved in actually pushing this topic because it's just so critical. Anyone else? If anybody knows of any active transportation groups in other cities, please share them in the chat, because I know Santa Ana has one, I know, but that are doing things in this area, because it really is important that we're sharing how people can join and learn what's going on in their city. So if you have one in Huntington Beach or Newport or wherever you are, please share that as well.
If I may, what Yusuf just recently put together, the Strong Towns OC, that part of the goal there is to be kind of a central hub for all the active transportation groups in Orange County. So I've put that in the
Great.
chat. They're on Twitter and there's an email. So email that to get plugged in.
Okay, great. Great. And I'll send out the QR codes for those in our newsletter as well. Anyone have any other comments? I think our rail person left.
Oh,
So,
I
yeah.
see Yuri asked a question in the chat. I could just answer verbally if that's okay.
Okay.
She asked, what kind of activities does Rise do usually with members? We mostly just go over city council agendas, and we also organize public comment when we have to, and honestly, that's kind of the extent of it. Every maybe 2 months or 3 months, we might do something all together in person, like we'll go get boba or something, like very Irvine. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of what we do. It's pretty relaxed. So
If you can follow CMABS or Rise on Twitter, I highly recommend it, because they are sharing useful articles all the time, just on what's going on in the country, in the state of California. But at a minimum, get on the Slack or the email, because you guys do a really good job of sharing there as well. So
All those links are way up in the chat. If you need to find CMABS is mostly on Instagram. I think Rise is on Twitter, but all the emails and everything are up at the top of the chat if anyone wants to scroll up and grab those before we end.
And I'm just going to share all our links again to it. It is really, if you join our Facebook, you can post there yourself. And that's a great way to get active transportation information out too. You can always reach me at climaterealityprojectoc.com at gmail.com. We all check it, but I try to check that as often as I can. And but we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter as well, so make sure you join us there. And like I said, I'm going to put my email in the chat again. You can reach me at the Climate Reality email, but also if you have information or want your city more involved, it's really important that one of the best things too you can do is watch your city emails and watch your city agendas. Our Huntington Beach members are really good about telling us when there's climate action, when there's bike action on the agendas. And sometimes that's just really hard to keep following. So if you can do that, Buena Park, Denise, you've been great at that as well. So we really appreciate, there's a lot of cities in Orange County and there's a lot going on, and it's really helpful when we're kept in the loop and we can send information out. Any last comments before we close for the night?
Linda, I'll just throw it out there. Oh, go ahead.
Just like to thank everybody for coming. This is a really great presentation tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to throw it out there, Linda. Let's do an ATP plus climate action of somehow, maybe a bike ride for climate or a walk for climate. Let's bring these communities together.
That's a great idea. I love it. It's a really great idea. Yeah. Could we take a screenshot? Would you, most of you who want to turn your cameras on, and we'll just do that for a minute. It's really great if we can. I'm just gonna say 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. And then I'm gonna just do it one more time. Goodness. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna do that one again. 1, 2, 3, smile. Sorry, guys. No, actually, if it's okay, do it again. Here we go. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll be sending the in a few days the recording out and information. And again, thank you so much to everybody that showed, and thank you to our 3 guest speakers. Brett, I know it's been a long day. Arliss, thank you for riding the train. Being such an inspiration, and Yusuf too. You know, you're taking it by storm. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. And thank you for all that you all are doing here. Great.
All right, look for that email on that,
Thanks, everyone.
that bike ride together, the climate active transportation bike ride. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks at Russell too for being.
Of course. Thanks for organizing. See you guys.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.